everyone, how are you going? As I promised earlier today in my stories, I've got my husband here, Grant. So you hear a lot from me all the time, but you haven't heard from my husband before. I think maybe earlier in the year I posted on my page a photo of Grant and I during our engagement, and I posted an interview with him about what it's like to be married to somebody with complex PTSD, and I've had it on my mind for ages to interview him, but it's taken a long time to be able to do it. So hello, Grant.
Hello.
What do you want to say to everyone?
Happy to be as helpful as I can. If I don't answer anything, or if there's anything else you want to know beyond what we're talking about here, just let me know, and I'll let Jess know, and we can do this again. So please feel free. I'm an open book when it comes to this, as Jess is. So yeah, however we can help.
Cool. Okay, so Grant, I thought that we could start with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and how we met or whatever, and then we'll get into down the track and complex PTSD emerging.
Cool. So I'm from country in New South Wales, a place called Tamworth, where I grew up. I moved to Wollongong, where we live now, when I was 18 and studied social science at university. Travelled a lot, lived in various places in the world, became a youth pastor when I was about 23, and I met Jess at our local church, and we got married, and I've got two kids, Ari, who's 6, Valerie, who's 3, and we were pastors for 10 years, and we've just transitioned out of that, and yeah, we're figuring out what's next. I'm in career transition, as Jess refers to it.
Transitioning careers. Okay, so Grant, maybe something that you could tell them is when you started to notice that something wasn't quite right, and maybe the whole process from your perspective of my complex PTSD emerging and the diagnosis, and what was your experience of that?
I would say the first year that we were married, and we've been married like 8 years now, the first year that we were married, Jess has always been very focused on her physical health, worried that there was something abnormal within her body, that she was sick or suffering from something. So there was always a mild health anxiety, I would describe. We'd always be doing crazy food things, fads, and trying different things, and always be the most random things in the fridge, and something that looked like just some gruel in the fridge turned out to be some valuable ancient grain she'd been soaking, and I'd just chuck it out and wash it up, and she'd get angry at me because of those things. And then a couple of years ago, it started to intensify quite significantly, her anxiety around her health.
That was after kids, yeah?
After kids, yep. After 2 kids and a miscarriage in between our 2. So she had where she would go from thinking she was sick with one particular thing, and then maybe that would get resolved. Maybe you would logically work through why you didn't have that, or maybe you go to a doctor and they would tell you don't have that after some tests. But very quickly it would just evolve onto worrying about being sick with something else. And probably one of the most difficult things was that no amount of persuasiveness from me could convince her otherwise. If I managed to convince her that she wasn't sick with something, inevitably the next day she would be fixated on something else. So there was nothing cognitive, there was nothing I could say to make her feel better. And that's when I agreed, okay, well maybe there is something wrong, what do I know? There was this intensive food program, a detoxing program. That was very expensive, cost a lot of money. It was very intense. That intensified her anxiety. And that's when things went really pear-shaped. And I didn't know what was going on. I don't know if I'm going into another question.
No, you're not. So I was really just asking, like you've answered the question. So I guess what you've answered then is, how did you start to see signs of it emerging? And then maybe you could now go into like, when did shit hit the fan? And like, what was that like for you? And when did like it all start to make sense? Yeah,
it was sort of hard to recall completely well because we're in such survival mode that it's just a bit of a blur looking back on last year. I had no idea what was going on. It was really confusing. There was obviously something wrong, but I had no idea what. It was very frustrating because I couldn't get through to her. No matter what I said, I couldn't penetrate her mind. And that was really difficult. That was really frustrating. Jess was absent. And I very much felt like a single parent of two children, well, of three children, and Jess was my most complex child. Like, that's what it felt like. And it was, like I said, it was very confusing because I didn't have any idea what was going on. And people asked me what was going on with Jess. Is she okay? What's happening with her? I didn't really have an answer. So it was very hard to know what type of help we needed, what was going on. Some days she'd be good and I'd be like, okay, this is good. She's getting better. That was just a weird phase. It just passed and let's get on with our lives. But then it would come back again.
And what were sort of the signs that started to emerge that it was like things were actually hitting the fan? It was going next level.
You weren't sleeping. You were like terrified all the time. You weren't able to function as a mother or a wife or in any capacity. You were just you just weren't here. And I think one of the things that happened that was really significant, like Ari, our son, came home with a picture, and of just his family, and in the picture it was only 3 people. And I was like, "Oh, who are these people?" And he said, "That's you, Daddy. That's me, and that's Valerie." And I was like, "Oh, where's Mummy?" And he just, I don't know. It was his way of articulating, "Mummy's not here." Yeah. Triggered.
No, it's not triggering.
And that's when I was
just,
like,
I can't believe that
my kids
was a year ago, you know?
This is the way my kids are feeling. They just don't know where their mum is. I don't know where she is either. She's there, but she's not. And I don't know how to help her. I don't know what to do. Yeah, it's pretty tough.
Yeah. And so then maybe describe like, okay, everything had hit the fan, and then what was kind of that next phase of actually figuring things coming together and going, oh my gosh, like this is not what we thought.
You're going a lot of therapy, seeing a lot of GPs, just trying a lot of different things. But when we reached out to a friend of ours who's a psychiatrist, and we went and saw her, she sat with us and said, this is a traumatic response. Jess's trauma has surfaced for whatever reason, and she's responding to it the way your body's kind of designed to respond. It's like an alarm system had gone off in Jess's head, but it wasn't able to be turned off. And that's when it started to make sense that this wasn't a physical illness. This was a mental problem that was going on. Yeah, that's when it started to drop, and that's when things started to improve.
So what happened then from there? I guess, how were you feeling when you realised, oh, this has a name and this is a thing? Like, did that change anything for you? Or was that like? Was it disillusioning, or was it comforting in a way, or what did it give you hope, or was it scary, or?
Oh, it was relief. Yeah, it was relief. Oh, thank God, someone's confidently got an idea of what is going on, and what to do about it. And I think at that stage, we're just so desperate for anything, because I didn't really know how we could keep going the way we were going. It was just, it was just really, really hard. So it was really relief. It was gratitude. It was like, thank goodness.
So from there, I'll just fill in a little bit. From there, I've spoken about Dr. Karen Williams. She's a good friend of mine, and she's a psychiatrist that specialises in complex PTSD and trauma. And from there, everything for me just started to make sense. I was still in survival mode. The traumatic response was like so high that I was only sleeping every 2 nights. It was an embodied experience that I can barely articulate. I was not there. I was not able to be with my family. I was in complete survival mode. But I was given some drugs to calm things down. One of those being Seroquel, which I really did not want to take, but I had to because it was borderline like psychotic almost, some of the experiences that I was having, and they needed to be calmed down. So I was taking that for 10 months in order to sleep. And Grant, like, what was it that when did you sort of start to see things change, or just maybe go through that next phase of like, okay, crisis mode? What was kind of the journey from there that you remember?
There was a bit of relief when some Valium came along.
Oh, and that was at the beginning.
Even just for a week, it was like, oh my goodness, like that kicked in, and it was just.
It's kind of liquid gold, isn't it?
Yeah, it was incredible, but we were warned.
But you can't take it long term.
Not to take it long term.
Well, I couldn't. I was told not to.
Seroquel definitely helped you go to sleep.
Yeah.
Which was really important while we're waiting for other meds to kick in. The initial stage was just medication came to the rescue.
It's just crisis mode.
Yeah, pretty much. To just de-escalate the situation before we could really begin to unpack just what was going on, what happened, and why was it there, where did it come from, that type of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, all throughout this time, you're like working and being a dad and looking after the kids. Like, that's pretty chaotic.
Yeah.
Like, were you run down? Like, what were you just? I mean, it was traumatic for you as well.
Yeah, I think you're running off adrenaline, and so you're just going. And I'd wake up at night, and Jess has been awake all night, and so I'm up with her, and you have responsibilities at work that you're trying to maintain, and because you don't have a clear idea of what it is, you don't really know what to say to work, because there was no diagnosis at that stage, and I had no idea what was going on. It's not like I could come and say, hey, my wife's going through this, and I need some time off because this is what the doctor has recommended, or something like that. It was like, I don't know what's going on. It was difficult to know how to handle that with work. A lot of my responsibilities at work, I was kind of, it was difficult to delegate a lot of that. Some of them were very direct responsibilities that I had to carry, and so that was hard to just shed quickly. And then, obviously, 2 kids as well, and trying to manage that. And trying to, them acting out in ways, them not expressing, in a proper way what they're feeling, but they're acting it out in certain ways because they're just sensing the absence of their mother, and so looking after them and managing them, and when they're awake at night, in the middle of the night, going to them and then coming back to Jess, and
Guys, I'm going to press pause and we're going to do the next in video 2, okay? Because it can only go for 15 minutes, so we'll pick up where we left off.